You're right, all right. How's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is the Doodle Review coming through with another episode of Chattin Fraff. Me and Nathan from Crones are going to chat about Deer Hunter and their quite underrated and maybe career kind of faltering album Monomania. We also pick up on a few of the topics that we chatted about last week. Stuff about Mastodon, post Brent Hines. We talk a little bit about the Racketeers, the Brian James from the Damned album that we were kind of both surprised to learn about last time. And yeah, this is becoming a bit of a regular thing, and I hope you enjoy it. This isn't really a promotional sort of thing, but I do recommend checking out Nathan's band Crones if you're really into any of the bands that we sort of discussed, particularly Queens of the Stone Age from last week, but also there's elements that kind of evoke the psych elements of bands like Deer Hunter. So yeah, I think you do well to check them out. If you're looking for new music reviews, I deliver these now weekly via an email newsletter. You can find a link to subscribe to those in the description. You can also find a bunch of videos that I've done that might be relevant to what we've watched here. Other than that, though, nothing more to say than just check it out. Let me know what you think. Well, thanks, man, for coming back on in such quick succession. I just thought it was really cool, not just chatting songs for the deaf with you last week, but it was fun just to kind of jam on some new music stuff, hear some opinions on that other than my own. So I thought, why not go again? I feel like this week there's kind of a lack of last week we had deaths, we had band splits and dramas and whatnot. This week it's much more kind of like bands announcing projects and releasing new singles. But just off the back of our conversation last week, did you see that Mastodon had performed and they had Ben Eller stand in for Brent?
Yeah, I it seems like it went pretty well. I guess like out of all the people that you could get sort of like last minute, it seems like this is a guy who's pretty steeped like in their music and has done tons of analysis on it online and that kind of thing. I'm not super familiar with him. I've seen a video or two here and there, but
Mm,
yeah, it seems like the fan base was pretty open to it too. And yeah, who
yeah,
who knows if that's like a permanent thing or just a one-off or
I thought it was. I mean, I thought it was cool. That they obviously found this guy, and I don't know much about him, but obviously he's just like kind of he's an incredible guitarist who, as I understand it, makes a lot of kind of has made a lot of Mastodon content, so he knows the library. The one thing I saw from the fans was that people were quite happy with, like, it seemed, and who knows, right, might have done this if Brent was in the band, but like from the looks of the set list, they brought back a bunch of stuff they haven't been playing for ages as well, which I think definitely I wonder if that was a move by them to be like, okay, we know people might be a little bit hurt about Brent leaving, so like let's pull out some gems we haven't played in ages, but seemed to go down well.
maybe those were songs that Brent didn't want to play or something, you know?
Could
He was
be.
like, yeah, and they're like, okay, well, we have the opportunity now. The fourth voice in the band who would dissent to this is gone, so let's play some of these songs we haven't played in forever.
Yeah. I think it's pretty impressive that the band that parted ways with their much beloved and arguably most unique member actually ended up getting a better reception than the band who put on the festival, because I heard people were not happy with Tool.
Yeah, well, I guess they did two sets and it was advertised as two unique sets, which generally you would think that would mean no repeats of songs between the sets, but that doesn't seem to be how it went down.
No.
Oh,
And
oh,
did wasn't the whole thing like, it's like a whole package, so it's like 4 grand or something to go, which
yeah,
is
wild
mad.
amounts. Yeah, yeah. Those package like band sort of like destination festivals are bizarre to me. I mean, it's cool. It's a cool idea, and obviously these bands have the fans to make it work.
Mhm.
But yeah, man, that's a lot of money.
It's a ton. And but I mean, yeah, I don't know who did to, I don't I'm not are you a Tool guy? I'm not really a Tool guy.
I'm not so much a Tool guy. I
Mhm.
I enjoy a thing here and there,
Hmm.
but I think the last like 10, 15 years of Tool material has not been for me, which is fine. It's
Mm.
for Tool guys,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
and you
thought
know a Tool guy when you see him.
100%, 100%, and much love to you, those that are out there.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against Tool, and I have mad respect for the musicianship. Like you, everyone knows, I think that has any sort of relationship to rock music that basically Tool equals like virtuosic instrument playing and weird time signatures, and Danny Carey is in Legend and all of that stuff. But I just haven't found my way into it. I certainly can't imagine paying 4 grand to go and watch them. But that's for the people that are into it. I just makes me think that like the best one of these tours was clearly the Motorhead cruise ship, just for the
Oh,
fact motorboat,
yeah. The name makes it, right? What was the Tool one
100%.
called? Tool in the Sand.
Tool,
It's like,
tool in the set.
come on, you can do better than that. I think
Yeah.
that's what. But yeah, I haven't really been enamored by anything they put out since Lateralis. I found 10,000 Days and Fear Inoculum to both sound really similar as albums and both to be kind of, yeah, just kind of ponderous and not really for me. It feels like the energy has kind of been sucked out of the band to a certain degree. But I mean, they're also older guys. That's okay.
Yeah, totally. I feel like Maynard seems to be more interested in like Pucifer and like all of his various other projects. It seems like a very reluctant thing to be like, oh, it's like Julian Casablancas and the Strokes, like, oh, she's got to do this thing again.
Yeah, you got to drag them to the good time. I
Um,
It seems like there's sort of like conflicting ideas about what takes them so long to make music because I guess he's not necessarily involved in sort of like the composition of like the music tracks, maybe he has some arrangement ideas or whatever. But it
mm,
sounds like he just sort of comes in at the end once the songs have been written and finds the melody and puts lyrics over top of it.
mhm.
From what I've read, maybe I'm off base on that, but
I mean, maybe it just takes so long to figure out those incredibly complex time signatures. Like basically, Danny Carey's there with a calculator, just like trying to work out like,
with his abacus.
yeah, how do you play a beat in 3 and 4/5 or whatever? I'm clearly not a drummer.
Yeah, well,
Um,
hey, there.
my favorite Tool related like trivia thing that I think I found out through Josh Freese when do you remember when or did you hear about when Josh Freese did a solo album like this was like 20 years ago and he released like packages of varying degrees.
No, I had no idea.
So it was like he was in obviously Nine Inch Nails in the 2000s, late 2000s, and uh Trent had released the Ghosts material on like several different editions and you could get like this big bundle. And Josh Freese released his solo album with a similar thing, except like the packages just kept going up and up and up to like tens of thousands of dollars. And it was like, I will come and record an EP with you. I'll be your personal assistant. One of them was something like you can fly out to LA, will drive around in Danny Carey's Lamborghini, which he's had the ceiling raised in because he's so tall, and will like go down the golf course or something like that. And it was like 25 grand or something stupid. But apparently someone did buy one of the big packages. Like someone literally laid down like 10 grand or something. It was crazy.
He could get 2.5 tickets to Tool in the Sand with that money.
Shit. Yeah, should have saved that money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, have you heard the solo album? Is it any good?
Um, It's all right. I like Josh Freese a lot as just a presence in music, and I think his story is amazing. I think like I remember the solo album is fine. There's one song though that I will actually constantly listen back to, not constantly, but I find myself revisiting over the years. It's called "I Don't Think That's Okay," and it's just like a fun pop punky kind of tune. It's got a great riff. I recommend it.
Cool. Does he sing on it or?
He does the whole thing. He's a
Oh,
very
cool.
talented guy.
Yeah, yeah. See, I only know him for being the guy who drums in every band that needs a drummer, you know?
Yeah.
Like Devo and gosh, he's been in so many bands, it's insane.
I think if you listen to something from like 19 between 1995 and 2005, there's a 90% chance that Josh Freese like played drums on it.
What a career. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to check it out. Do you know if it's on streaming or?
Actually, it's definitely on YouTube.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's made it. It was in that weird time between when bands were selling packages of stuff before streaming came in, so it's kind of not made the leap. But you
Right.
definitely find it on YouTube. I'll put it in the notes maybe when I put this up.
Yeah, cool.
Um, Other than that, on the topic of new music, that's kind of what a lot of, like I said, not much in the way of news, but a lot of bands releasing projects. We both kind of shared a couple back and forth before getting on online on this one. I don't know if you had chance to listen to the Thom Yorke stuff.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I listened to the two that have come out this year.
Mhm.
Who? What's the name of the fellow he's collaborating with?
A guy called Mark Pritchard, who I wasn't familiar with, but apparently he's been around for ages. In various forms, he's like a producer or like kind of dance producer. For those that can't, I literally just did the most like boomer movement with my hand. He does the DJ stuff. Um,
Luckily, it's out of frame. So
he he's just gone by many names, but yeah, apparently these guys, I think they formed some sort of relationship because he remixed something for King of Limbs. Um,
I saw that they had a previous collaboration 8 years ago on just like one track.
Mhm.
So I watched the videos for all three tracks. And to me, it's firmly okay. Like there's nothing about it that makes me want to revisit it, but I don't
Mm.
I don't regret listening to it. You know, it's like it's a little too atmospheric and like ambient for me. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? A little too like much of a wash
I
of
know
sort of
exactly what you mean.
like cool sounds and cool things are happening, headphone candy and what have you, but nothing really grabs me.
Yeah, I had the exact same reaction actually the first time I listened to it. It kind of just came and went. I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, sounds like a Thom Yorke joint. Um, I think I went back to it and I found more to enjoy about it, and perhaps more will come like when the album comes out. I think the second one, which was the Conversation is Missing Your Voice, was a bit more interesting. It had like more of a nicer like groove to it, and just felt a little bit less like, oh, I'm Thom Yorke and I'm ethereal. Like,
Yeah,
it's like there was some lightheartedness to it.
I would agree. Yeah, I think the conversation is missing your voice was the one that had sort of like a you're a box in an Amazon warehouse kind of like music video. I
Okay,
don't know
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah.
you
I
watch
didn't
the video.
watch the video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's basically like you're on uh not a treadmill, but I don't know what the word is, like a production line kind of,
Uh-huh.
and you're a box and you're watching all these other boxes kind of get shipped out to other spots. But yeah, that song had more energy at least. It was like a bit groovier.
Mm.
Um, seems to be like from the bits of lyrics I caught. That's the thing. It's always hard with Tom's uh sort of like cadences and stuff to actually pick up a lot of what he's saying, at least
Mhm.
for me. Like because it's always got so much effect on it, and he has sort of like a drawly kind of like extends the syllables and that kind of thing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I kind of like obscure lyrics at times, but yeah, that's just sort of how he operates, which is cool. Like it's
Mm.
his thing, you know. But sometimes it's difficult to even understand the words he's saying. It's like I'll have to go look it up and actually like read it and be like, what was that?
What's your what we've I don't think we've ever really spoken about Radiohead or Tom Yorke. Like, what's your are you a fan? Are you
Oh yeah,
not?
I like Radiohead.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I'm like a huge fan or anything, but I really appreciate what they do. I really like a lot of their albums and songs. I
Hmm.
don't find myself revisiting them as frequently um, in the past like 3 or 4 years for
Mm.
whatever reason. Um, but yeah, I mean, okay, computer, you can't beat it for that era, right? It's like one of the best albums of the 90s. Um,
That's one of my big ones that I'm embarrassed to admit. I don't know it, but like
oh,
I
wow. Ah,
I know the big tunes, but
hmm.
yeah, it's really strange because I love Radiohead and almost every other album of theirs I'm really familiar with, but it's just a really weird. Why have I why have I not listened to the one that's arguably the thing? I don't know. I need to sort it out, but I've admitted it now. I don't know it very well.
I find sometimes I'll do that too with artists, or even like an artist I know that I'm going to enjoy. I'll
Hmm.
kind of put off and I'm like, oh, I'll save that for later. It's like, so I have something to look forward to, it's
Totally.
something that,
It's really nice to know that there's because I love the band, so it's nice to know that there's actually something there, especially because I found myself recently really getting back into the bends and being a little bit like looking at some listening to it or I watched a performance as well and was like looking at it a bit forlornly like oh that almost like that band is gone now like that they're never gonna do that again and I don't want them to but it you also kind of feel a little bit like oh
yeah, I mean, but they've already done it and it's always going to be there. So,
exactly exactly
yeah,
um
I mean, it would be wild if they just put together like an ugly sort of like guitar rock album again.
I feel like it would be the most subversive thing they could do at this point, which I feel like is a big driver potentially of what they like to do. And it's like, they've created some of the most ethereal or beautiful ethereal combinations of alternative electronica, stuff. Um, just come back with like a grungy album, people would be like, "What?" Even if they just did it for a laugh, I bet it'd be good. I bet they got it in them.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah, I bet they do. I wonder, yeah. I mean, obviously they avoid doing the same thing repeatedly, it seems like. I feel like maybe Hail to the Thief was sort of like a small return to
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, like a little more guitar focused, but not sort of in the way that we're envisioning, I don't think.
I always think of Hail to the Thief as the most like Radiohead by numbers album in the sense of it kind of typifies what most people think of when they think of Radiohead, even though it doesn't necessarily have the songs on it. But it's kind of that combination of the kind of the rockier elements and the more kind of abstract weird stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's the platonic ideal of a Radiohead album.
Mm, totally. What did you shifting topics, what did you make of the new Ty Segall?
I haven't been super enamored with the last few Ty Segall albums.
Mm,
They just kind of like I've listened to them all, and there's probably standout tracks on them, but it just was sort of like another Ty Segall album.
hmm
But I feel like this particular song is kind of doing something that I've at least never picked up on in his music before, and that's like trying to tell a cohesive kind of narrative in the song.
mm.
Yeah, it's about sort of like a heist gone wrong, it seems like. Um,
I did not pick up on that, but then that lyrics are the last things that kind of that I get into. But I did notice how the track has these different phases and it has these different movements to it. That's really interesting.
yeah, basically from what I picked up from it, it's these two guys meet in a bar and they realize that rich people have already taken everything that they have. So why don't they go and take something from the rich? And then one of them betrays the guy who's like the protagonist of the song. And at the end of the heist, kicks him into the wine cellar and locks it. And that's like his fantastic tomb. Is he just gets to
Ah.
drink wine until he basically expires.
That's cool. That's got like a I don't, what would you call it? I don't want to say fairy tale, but like a very fable type narrative to it.
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
know what the moral message is, like be wary of sellers of wine, but it kind of feels like something that you would have in that, like those kind of fable-like stories.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got like the Tales from the Crypt twist ending.
Mm,
But yeah, it just seemed like it's something he's going outside of his lyrical wheelhouse and trying something a little more ambitious, which I appreciated.
yeah, definitely. I felt the same way from a musical standpoint as well, because I was really surprised last year that out of the two albums he put out, or I think two albums, it could be more, um, that I enjoyed the impressionistic abstract drum record
Mm,
more than his the Three Bells, which is like his kind of Ty Segall doing his thing. Because that I just felt was just more of, I don't know, nothing. If you ask me now, I couldn't tell you a song from it. Like nothing springs to mind, and that is also a measure of I haven't put it on in a while, but I haven't felt that urge. Whereas this, I really liked the just the tempo, even to start with at the beginning, has this really nice groove to it, which some stuff of his doesn't have. Not He does a lot of stuff at that tempo, but not all has that kind of like slinky groove to it. And then it was kind of like moving into these different sections. This like acoustic but riffy section with great vocals. Then there's like horns at the end. Um, yeah, definitely. I can't recall anything in the most recent kind of sequence of albums that touches on that.
yeah, totally. It's cool to feel uh mildly, not that I think that he has done any albums that are bad or poor,
Agreed.
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It just it hasn't really captured my attention in the same way that this one has for a
Mm.
while. Um, I think the last one and my favorite of his albums is Emotional Mugger. I don't know if you know that one.
I actually haven't gone back to that one, but I've heard you mention that before, so I definitely need to put it to my list.
Yeah, it's one of the those albums in the long line of albums that I like that are kind of like a sidestep from what you expect and are kind of like noisier and more experimental and yeah, just like his guitar sound on that album is so fucking ugly and
Mm.
like a lot of the songs are like really ugly and yeah, and just weird. Like there's a really great KEXP, I think, performance. Because during that period, um, he was like performing in like a baby mask. I don't know if you've seen any of those
I've definitely
performances.
seen images of that, which is super
Um,
unnerving.
yeah, those performances are wild. They're crazy, and crazy good as well.
Mm.
But like King Tuff is in the band. Uh,
Hmm.
Corey Hansen's in the band, and for the emotional mugger like cycle. And it's just like maybe that's the best band he's ever had too.
Is he the dude that went on to do Meat Bodies?
Corey Hansen was in Meat Bodies, yeah,
Right. Yeah, that was a great project. I know that some of them came out of the Ty Segall band, so a lot of
yeah.
talent there.
His main, I think he was only in Meat Bodies for maybe an album or two, but his main thing is Wand.
Oh, okay. I've heard the name, never listened.
Yeah, he also produced the last or mixed the last Crones album.
Sick. Oh, that's pretty
Yeah,
rad.
yeah.
Cool. All right. So these were Population 2. These are guys that you switched me on to. So tell me a bit
Yeah.
about them.
I mean, I don't know a ton about them.
Mm,
I got turned on to them via Castleface, which is John Dwyer from OC's label or old label.
hmm.
It's defunct now, but I would
Oh, I didn't know
generally,
that. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, they've been defunct for a couple of years, but they kicked up a new one this year called Death God Records. So that's the new sort of John Dwyer OC's home. Um, but yeah, I used to whenever Castleface would put something out, I would just check it out.
Mm.
And then yeah, the first uh, album that I got by them, Population. I'm not sure if it's Population Two or Population Two because they're
It would be. That's me just being the complete
no,
Anglo-centric.
but I also don't know. I have no idea if they prefer it one way or the other. But yeah, it's just really good, like catchy krautrocky kind of like post punk stuff, and it's all in French, so I
Mm,
don't understand anything they're saying. But yeah, I find their first two albums are super enjoyable to me, and
mm.
I really enjoy really enjoyed the two singles from this upcoming album that comes out at the end of the month here. I think March 28th. It's out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's all the same thing. Yeah, me too. I think these are great tracks. Like,
Yeah,
weren't aware of these guys at all. And yeah, both tracks I've really enjoyed. I really like, and I never have the correct way of saying this, and nor do I know if this is even like the right thing to say, like however it's offensive, but there's like a certain vibe that I love in music, which is this like very French. I don't know. It just makes me want to smoke a cigarette, have my sunglasses on, and either just drink wine or have a coffee and like just watch the world go by. Like there's a bit of that, but they've put it through this kind of garage rock prism. Um, it reminds me a lot of Letitia Sedier's album from last year. She's in Stereolab, I think, and it's her. She'd put a solo project out last year, and it has all of that sort of French vibe, but it's that kind of fused with. I would actually even say like Deer Hunter, like that would be two like cool kind of comparisons. I would think.
cool. I'll have to check out that first album you mentioned because if it's anything in the vein of this stuff, I'll love it. Like
It's
they're
much
just
more the chilled side of that. So like the kind of yeah, very much more what I'm saying about kind of like people watching with a glass of wine and a cigarette and looking
mm,
very bourgeois. But it's there's I think there's like a an aspect of that in population deux, and which I think is more than just them speaking French. I think it's kind of there in there. Makes me want to be like a European art dealer.
yeah, there's like a cool sort of like aloofness to it.
That's it. That's a much better way of describing it, man.
But yeah, and it's also like danceable and like has
Mhm.
cool change ups in it. It's just it scratches all the little itches in my musical brain that I like hearing, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
It's slightly psychedelic, slightly funky, slightly noise rock.
Yeah, it's sick. I'm looking forward to that album. And yeah, new band for me. I would highly recommend people check it out. If you could make sense of any of those comparisons that we just made, check it out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
circling just back to a follow-up to last week's conversation, we were obviously talking about Brian James of The Damned, and we were both kind of staggered by his random project in the at the turn of the millennium called The Racketeers with Duff McKagan and Stuart Copeland
And Wayne Kramer.
and Wayne Kramer.
Yeah,
Yes. Did you get a chance to listen to the record?
I did. Yeah, did you?
I did. What did you think?
Overall, it's kind of a big. I didn't have high expectations, so I wasn't disappointed. Um, but it sounds like old dudes bashing out some tunes over like a week or something.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs feel like kind of first drafts. If they'd maybe been given a little more attention, I think it would have benefited them, like a little bit of polish,
Yeah.
and not necessarily even in like the performance or anything, but more like in the lyrical uh, aspects of it. I didn't find it unenjoyable. Like nothing on it was like offensive to me, or I thought outright sucked. But I did prefer Brian James's tracks to Wayne Kramer's.
Oh,
Wayne,
really?
oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. It reminded me of sort of like mid-period like Iggy stuff,
Mm. What,
like
Brian
like
James
Zom
or
Brian James. Yeah,
mm,
like his stuff reminded me sort of like zombie birdhouse like era Iggy Pop, or like brick by brick Iggy Pop. Like
mm.
these albums that exist and are fine, but don't really have any standouts or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Um, that's a good comparison. I think that's like quite a well put comparison because if I remember rightly, I think Brian James and Clem Burke, who's the drummer for the majority of the record, I think was Iggy's, probably maybe not even at the same time, but at one point they both filtered in of Iggy's band during those kind of weird late 70s, 80s
Yeah, the
records.
the wilderness years.
Yeah. I need to do an album ranking of Iggy's stuff because a few years ago I've got almost all of his work on vinyl, all the stuff that was pressed to vinyl anyway. And yeah, I mean, like I just, when you decide to go down one of those rabbit holes, and like for weeks, I just went through every Iggy record, and Iggy has got, Lust for Life is up there as one of my favorite albums of all time, and but also like New Values. He's got some amazing stuff in his catalog, but he's also one of those artists that's done so much and is so it's so important on an Iggy record who he's working with. You know, as to not to say that he doesn't have an input, but he needs people to kind of help shepherd that vision. And there are definitely examples in his catalog where he's either not partnered up with the right people or he's just not interested at the time and he's just kind of churning an album out to kind of keep on the wheel. I don't know what part Clem Burke and Brian James kind of fell into, probably some of those forgettable ones. But yeah, I feel like this record, I would agree with you in the sense that it's it just sounds like a bunch of guys that know what they're doing, hashing
Mhm.
some shit out, and someone obviously got some money somewhere to do it. And they were just like, right, I got a record deal. I got this advance. Let's hash out 10 tracks in a basement and pocket whatever change we can keep from the rest of it. Maybe that's presumptuous of me, but it just like you say, there could be some good stuff there, but it's not very slapdash. I always come to those things with so much optimism. Like I just want to be like, here's this
Mhm.
hidden gem, this classic, but
Yeah,
I I don't
keep
know. It's not that.
looking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's certainly not on on. I mean, you could argue that the album artwork is a good indicator of that. It's probably some of the most hideous album artwork I've seen. The orange version.
Because yeah, the non-photo version, like
Yeah,
the one, yeah. I don't hate that album cover. I kind of like ugly ass album covers sometimes. Like, and I think it kind of fits the album.
what the ugly ass album that it is. Yeah, one thing I was surprised by it is like, and I suppose he's only showed up for a couple of songs, but Stuart Copeland's tracks are he was probably the biggest draw for me because I think he's an incredible drummer, an amazing jazz drummer that found his way in the rock scene and frustrated his musical partners for forevermore. But on this album, he's like on the songs he's like playing it so straight. which I was really surprised about, but also lends credence to what you're saying about there not being much time. Like, I reckon if they had Stuart Copeland and he's not doing loads of weird shit, they probably just had one song and he's just there like bashing it out first time.
Yeah, yeah, along for the ride. Yeah, I mean, it. There were a couple of songs that I thought were better than the rest. Um, I like I think the second track. What was it called? Like Christiana or something.
Mm.
It
That's a
has,
Kramer track.
yeah, that's the one Kramer track that I thought sort of like was elevated above the other Kramer tracks because
Okay,
I feel
because when you
the
said when you said you didn't like them, I was thinking, oh, but my favorite's Christiana. Like that's a shame.
Christiana has like a cool like noise rock guitar intro
Hmm.
before it gets into it. That was like that made my ears perk up and I was like, "Oh, is this going to be something interesting?"
Hmm.
And then the rest of the song happened and it was okay. But like the first like 12 seconds I was like, "Oh, what is this?"
Mm. Yes.
He Wayne Kramer just has sort of like a grumpy old man kind of like delivery on this album. Like that what was it like Welcome to Poisonville or something? And it's
Yes.
basically like a blues rock vamp and he's just like doing sort of like the sing speak thing over top of it and I'm like, "Oh man, come on."
Yeah, I think I found that one pretty painful. That was when I was definitely checking my watch when I was
Yeah.
listening to it.
Yeah, and I think there's only one song that breaches 4 minutes and you're still like, okay,
Yeah.
we could have trimmed this fat slightly.
100%. 100%. I would say the one thing that I find interesting about this one is that I found looking at Discogs is that I guess the touring version of this band was different to the studio version, and the touring version included Manny from the Stone Roses on bass,
Oh,
which just seems like a random. I mean, but you know, having Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses is. Hey, maybe that was it. Guns N' Roses not available. Stone Roses bassist get in the band.
maybe they just got confused. Like,
Yeah,
no, it was the bassist from the Stone Roses.
yeah,
Not,
yeah. And Manny just shows up one day and he's just like, oh, all right, yeah, that's funny. All right, well, keeping with the theme of building on some of our chat from last week, one album that came up was from a band that we both really like, the band Deerhunter and the album Monomania. You said at the time that it's your favorite Deerhunter record. I think there's like eight, 7 or 8 Deerhunter
yeah, there's
records.
eight. I think this one's the fifth. So I think there's seven. Yeah,
Hmm.
because there's two after this.
How did you get into Deerhunter? Like, what was the first thing you heard?
I think it was through there's like a split 7 inch that they did with Jay Retard,
Mm,
uh, where they covered each other's work, and I think he had covered Fluorescent Gray,
yep.
and then I went back to check out the original Fluorescent Gray, and that got me into Microcastle, and that's basically where I started.
Yeah. I mean, I forgot about their relationship because they were quite close, right? Until Jerry Tard passed away. They were quite well intertwined. Was um Jerry Tard from Atlanta as well? Was that what
You
the
know,
connection was?
I'm not positive on that. I For some reason the back of my brain says he was from San Francisco, but I don't know why I think that. I have no backing for that assumption. I don't know why.
Taking it. He's from San
Yeah,
Francisco. This is the internet. You know, who's got time to check things?
I'm not gonna look that up.
No, fuck that. He's from San Francisco.
Sure,
Uh,
why not?
okay, so it'd be interesting that. So yeah, you got into them at a similar sort of time to me because it was Microcastle that was my first album of theirs. Probably is still my favorite, but I don't know whether that is because of just a lot of memories attached to that album. of it's an album that I will listen to anytime it starts turning to autumn here because it's just so many memories of like walking through those sorts of scenes with that album playing. Um, Weirdly, it all comes back to Queens of the Stone Age. I was recommended them on uh the amazing forum that they had, which was at the height of music piracy, 2000, whenever that was, 2006, 7, 8. And
The,
there was a thread that was kept alive in that forum for years of just like music recommendations, and people would just chuck in like the album art and then a rapid share link or a mega upload link or you send it, all the classic file sharing P2P um sites. And yeah, and I would just get so much music from there. And then it was someone was like, oh, this microcastle album is incredible. And then it was the pink, kind of like the pink cover with the reflection in the eye.
the little
It's
skull.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just too good to not give it a try. And yeah, I was blown away by like nothing ever happened. Just all of it. I think it's such a good album.
it is really good. Yeah, absolutely. I have memories of, I think my first listen to Microcastle was like I was on a flight to Vancouver or something, and I threw it on my iPod and like listened to it during the flight there and back, I think. So that's like a really strong memory I have associated with that.
Mm. I think it's one of those as well. Like it's just because there's a solid mix of great instant pop, not pop, but like instant songwriting moments like Agoraphobia or Nothing Ever Happened. But there's so many atmospheric parts as well. So it kind of fuses in your mind, I think, quite well to your surroundings because you have these moments where you're like locked in like a great song, and then there's moments where you're kind of daydreaming. And I wonder if that's why they end up creating these like strong associations.
Yeah, that's interesting. I and maybe this isn't true, but it feels like it is. I don't feel like I have a ton of like strong memories about a lot of things when I first heard them or whatever, you know?
Mm.
There's a handful of albums where I do have those memories, but for whatever reason, this is one of them. Yeah.
Mm. And I for some reason, again, I guess going back to the Radiohead thing, one album that I've not heard of Deer Hunter is Cryptograms, I think.
Is that the one right before Microcastle? Because
Yes.
I also haven't delved too far back. I think I probably gave it a listen or two, but I think the earlier stuff is a lot more raw,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, they're so young when they put out those first couple.
Yeah, the first one, Turn It Up, is is like is really noisy. But when you peel back the layers, there's this kind of, you can hear the krautrock influences they would start to pull from and stuff like that. And so there's Turn It Up, there's Cryptograms, which I'm not familiar with, then Microcastle. Then you have Halcyon Digest, which is basically the band. Probably this was, I guess, their peak in terms of critical success, and it was, I hesitate to say a commercial success, but I think that the love that it was getting from the Pitchforks and the Rolling Stones of the world was kind of elevating them a bit. And then we get to Monomania, and I feel like even though an album we both really like, you love, do you think it shot like their career completely in the foot?
I mean, potentially, yeah, because it's so different from the last couple albums, you know? It's like, and I don't know if that was sort of like an intentional sort of like, we don't appreciate the trajectory that we're on, or
Mm,
maybe Brad didn't and needed to scale it back and
mm,
make something like ugly. This is like an ugly sounding album.
yeah.
But but man, yeah, just some of the production choices I love. It's like there some of the guitars sound like rusty metal, like
I was just
screaming
about to say,
each other. Yeah, there's
It's
just some crazy, great, ugly production choices.
I feel like it's like because they got all of this praise and then they're on, late night with Fallon, which we'll mention in a minute. But like I just feel I can imagine this like swell of people being like, "Oh, I've heard these guys are like cool," uh, you know, and this was like what 20, so you're still in the kind of hipster-esque era of things, and there was a whole thing attached to that, and then you put on a song like I think it's Leather Jacket, and the whole thing is this repetitive guitar riff that sounds like a fucking rusty, the
Yeah,
hinge on a rusty gate, just like the whole time. And
right.
I love it now, but I remember the first time I put it on being like, God, this is hard work for a first listen, you know?
And and those like vocals are so blown out in that song.
Hmm.
It's like I can't understand a word he's saying, but I love it.
Hmm.
It's like it
Starts
sounds
the whole
like
thing just going, like on the mic.
totally, yeah. And there's no it sounds like they didn't record like the vocals with a pop shield or anything.
Hmm.
There's like E's and B's popping all over the place
Yeah,
and no attempt to like minimize them. They're all like throw some echo on that and you hear it like multiple times. It's crazy. It's like they did the production like the opposite of how you would think something would be produced.
100%. Yeah, it's like they probably were in a position. I mean, there's a Rolling Stone article which I might link in the thing, which I don't see many articles like this in Rolling Stone anymore, but it's almost like a it's not so much a written piece. There's like an introduction, and then the rest of it is like there's a photo and then like a long caption about what was happening at that time, and it's in the photographer or journalist is in the studio with them, and they're just so basically the band are there waiting for Bradford to show up. Um, and they're like setting up lights, painting their amps, putting fog machines on, just like being really weird. Bradford turns up with like a bag full of loads of different costumes and stuff that they're all going to wear. And then they're just like, I don't know, it seems like they're just like prattling around in the studio. And I think like this was arguably the moment where they've, I mean, like, who knows, right? I don't want to say like, oh, they would have the budget to do stuff, but I mean, I we're what 10 years, 12 years on from that, and I can guarantee that studio costs are not such that bands are spending any time fucking about with putting costumes on like right now. Like, so they were in some sort of bubble where they had enough time to do that, and yet here they are, just, yeah, making weird noises and doing random shit.
Yeah, I love that for them.
Yeah, totally.
It's it's like I read a quote where Bradford said that he was like really angry and that it's like a super angry album. And it sounds like to me a lot of the content is about sort of like coming of age and queerness
Mm,
and and illness. Like he mentions being sick on at least half of the tracks.
hmm.
And, and he is I don't know if you would call Marfan syndrome, which Bradford has as like a chronic illness. I don't know anything about it, but
Mm,
like clearly this is a guy that has like health issues, and sort of like is venting his spleen about it on record.
totally. I've always gotten the impression I'm like you. I know that he has Marfan's, but I don't know what that entails. But what the impression I've always got from his public appearances, interviews, the content and the music is that he's someone that has to deal with a lot of pain or just general discomfort. At least that's what's described. And I feel like this is in a lot of Deer Hunter stuff, both before and after, if that is takes a second place to more sentimental um stuff. Like it's there, but it's couched in some of this like more some of the dream pop elements or some of the, shoegazy stuff, and it's never as like a raw nerve as it is on Monomania, where it's just out exposed and like, yeah, like almost dealing with these issues, whether that be pain, discomfort, or just growing up or whatever, but like dealing with it in real time in these songs, like almost just, I'm not sure if they're all like stream of consciousness or what, but it feels like that, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that not all the songs have sort of like super tight structures, right? Like
Hmm.
Monomania itself doesn't really have a chorus or anything until the end when he's just repeating the title over and over again.
Hmm.
But the rest is just like what, four verses that kind of like lead into that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and there's just like so many layers of like these ugly noises. It's yeah, it's like a cacophony of like these seasick like feelings and sounds sort of like coming together.
Yeah, it's really unique. I find, what do you make of them saying about the influences of this? So they list the influences as being Pierre Schaeffer, who is the godfather of the whole music concrete movement,
Hmm.
Steve Reich, and Bo Diddley.
Yeah, I saw them mention Ricky Nelson as well.
Yeah,
Do you know Ricky Nelson?
I don't know.
He was like a teen idol like in the 50s, I think. And he
Okay.
also, yeah, he had like hits in the 80s as well. He sort of had a comeback, but like very, very poppy stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of that because I don't know much about those other artists, honestly.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, I guess the music concrete uh, stuff makes sense because a lot of these it borders on industrial almost,
Mhm.
like the production. I feel like there are songs that have like chains used as like percussion. There's one particular song that has like in sort of like the back of the stereo field, there's like this weird clicking, like rhythmic clicking that's going on. Sounds like maybe bike spokes or something.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
I
just
get I
like
get
all,
the feeling that there was a lot of shit dragged into the studio from just whatever they could find in the alleyway outside, which
yeah,
must have been a
totally.
dream for the studio owners and assistants. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a lot of that happening.
I uh I was looking at the Wikipedia and I was like, who like produced this? Because I really like it. And I was thinking about sort of like other albums in this vein that I seem to like. As I had mentioned, like the Spoon album Transference.
Hmm.
And there's a of Montreal album called Lousy with Sylvan which is like an ugly, almost like country rock album, which is really sort of like out of left field for them. But anyways, I was looking up the guy, Nicholas Vernes, I think that's how you say it, that produced it. And it turns out that he produced Spoon's Transference as well.
No shit.
And yeah, and I had no idea. I was like, it just that's always fun for me when like those little things happen, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I just like this guy's production style, I guess.
That's so interesting because I think on one hand, you can draw a line between these two albums, but it's not necessarily in the obvious sense. Like Transference isn't overly noisy, but it is almost another example of the band kind of doing maybe the opposite of what they're supposed to do, And again, a similar sort of story, right? Where Spoon, I think, had kind of had quite a breakthrough at that point after many years of albums and stuff, and yet this one they decided not to capitalize on it in the way that they would do on that's where their career trajectories between the two bands very much split off because I think I think the Monomania kind of just stamped whatever momentum they had down, whereas Spoons wasn't weird enough to do that. You could still hear enough of the band in there, but it definitely isn't like trying to be a hit record.
Yeah, it's kind of stark and live feeling. It's
Mm,
yeah, there's just sort of like a level of like let's trust our instincts
mhm.
and do the sort of like weird things we want to do and not second guess it and just let it live, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
But both those
totally.
feel very like alive to me. They feel very electric.
Mm, agreed. Yeah, not overly thought about or anything like that. What do you make of Lockett Punt's tracks on the album, or the track I think is just the missing on this one?
Missing. It's good. It harkens back to uh the previous sort of stuff, I feel.
Hmm.
Um More than the rest of the album does.
Totally.
Anyways, it's a little dreamier. It still has a bit of the harshness, but it's not nearly as like manic or strange. It's a little more dream poppy.
Totally. I almost feel guilty that his songs end up being my favorite songs from the
Oh,
album.
yeah, yeah.
Um, not like exclusively, like there are other songs that I really like on this record as well, but I just feel like his songs are always so undeniable. And even though this is a complete detachment from the rest of the aesthetic, really, it's just, his voice and an arpeggio guitar, and it's kind of like he'll make something that is kind of really gets in there and hypnotic, and it's kind of like his tracks will always be one of the favorites on the albums, even though I don't actually find his songs to be overly representative of what Deer Hunter are in the main, and that's what I love about them. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's always maybe not always, but generally I think it's cool to have like uh a couple songwriting voices in a band, you know?
Mm,
Um yeah, it just adds like some different perspective, especially on an album that feels so insular to like Bradford's experience.
yeah,
Um and what he's bringing to the table. The missing sounds a little more zoomed out, you know? It's not as uh angry and despairing as kind of the rest of the album is.
totally. Yeah, it's like a little mini break from the carnage in a way.
Yeah, and we're only 3 tracks into the album,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which makes its placement, yeah, exactly. It makes its placement kind of weird because you
It is
only
kind of
just are starting to realize how batshit this record is.
totally. And then they give you a tiny little respite and then right back into the sewer.
Yeah, 100%. Did you check out that Fallon performance?
I did. Yeah, it's awesome.
It was I remember I described it completely wrong last week, but I just remember I it's funny what stuck out about it. And weirdly it's not on YouTube. I had to hunt it down on Vimeo. Um,
Hmm.
but I think I described last week that they were like all in like a motorbike gang and all dressed on a motorbike or something, but that was not the case. But what you do have is them in kind of matching clothes. Bradford wearing some kind of wig, and his finger looks like it's bleeding or coming off.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder I like is that a bit? I had no idea if that's like real because it looks like his like middle finger is literally severed.
Yeah,
And like did he lose a finger? Like what is going on?
the whole
I,
thing as well. Like he walks off stage, the camera follows him all the way to the lift, but he like grabs someone's drink out of their hand. And like again, same thing. Like, is this a bit? Or is it just what it is?
yeah, I mean, I imagine they must have in order to have like the camera ready to go, like it must have been discussed, right? But I do love when people sort of like break these conventions of like television, you know?
The
And
talk
we get
show format.
yeah, it's cool. And you get to see sort of like the backstage and like what makes everything run just for like a moment.
Mm.
I dig stuff. I think that's always really fun when that happens.
I love it when it gives the yes, not to repeat what you've just said verbatim, but when a band gives the camera a reason to pan out just enough so you realize that the desk of the presenter is actually just next to the stage, which they don't let you believe normally. They kind of the way that they position it, right? It feels like it's another part of this whole big stage, and it's like actually no, they're just next to each other.
Yeah, it's like 3 feet away.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that stuff. It's so cool. Um, and to use that opportunity of being on like a national television broadcast to do something different and something subversive is totally on brand, you know?
totally. And yeah, they probably just attracted a bunch more people to check out the album, and then who put it on and went, "Oh,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the performance is pretty ripping. It's
mm,
like I feel like that performance probably prepares you for the album better than like previous Deer Hunter albums would prepare you for it.
I loved that there was someone in the corner just like playing a tape recorder or something.
Yeah,
Just random. I don't even know which member, like, or if they're even part of the band. But yeah, it was really funny. I was like, I'd love to know what exact sound that's contributing.
I think you can kind of hear it at the end when the band is sort of like has finished and is feeding back or whatever. There's like a loop going that you can kind of barely pick up on.
Is there like, because I could hear a little bit of like Bradford's voice echoing in some way. So I wonder if it's part of that.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what it was. Who knows for sure, but that was what I figured it was.
I'd always think like I'm quite envious of you know, the chat show archetype in the States gets a lot of shit, right? And like Fallon in particular. And that's by the by. But I think what people don't appreciate is that just through sheer fact of them having to put, you know, acts on so much, there's such a wide variety of artists that get to perform in these big mainstream things. And like we don't really have much of a chat show thing here. Like we have a couple that are weekly on a Friday or a Saturday night, not daily. And they always go for the kind of, you know, not necessarily always the biggest acts, but the artists that are like um just palatable to the mainstream audience. You know, they're
Aesthetic.
underground maybe, but they have been sanctioned by the label in you know in some way, and it's someone that's in a pop and R&B thing that you know your mum will quite like. Um, never Deer Hunter being fucking weird.
Yeah, well, I think that's also because all of these networks have these competing shows that even like ups the availability of slots even further, right? There's
Mhm.
like what 3 to 4 major late night shows. And I mean, these things are dying off just in general because the people who still watch network TV are
Dying.
like, yes, exactly. Or are too set in their ways to figure out how the internet works or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, tech illiterate or what have you. Not that I'm Steve Jobs or something, but yeah, it's interesting to see because now they're taking kind of even wilder swings. I think Chat Pile was on like Jimmy Kimmel or something
Oh shit.
this year, last year rather, and people were like freaking out about it. Like, how dare they put this death metal on my TV show? It's
Yeah.
like, how am I supposed to sleep after this?
Was that the same like was because I thought I also like Knocked Loose were on one as well.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Maybe it was Knocked Loose. I might have been off with Chat Pile, but
I mean, either or. But I think yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, is that decision motivated by someone in the music department like really wanting to push boundaries, or is it just like, shit, you know, I don't know who like so and so's got Green Day, there's no other like thing. We need a slot. Okay.
yeah, these guys happen to be in the area because they're playing a gig or something. Let's see if they want to come up. Who knows? Yeah, who knows how they book that stuff?
Do you have just a tangent, but do you have any kind of favorite chat show performance TV moments of bands?
Hmm. Well, I know you're not super hot on them, but I got into My Morning Jacket from a performance on Conan O'Brien.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, where they performed a song called Magita, and it rips. It's a really great performance. I think like if you like asked fans of that band how they got into them, there would be a not insignificant portion of people who were like, I saw them on Conan and they were fucking awesome.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. I will. I'm not hot on them. I'll
No,
I'll give
I
it a
know.
look.
You're not as hot on it as me.
Yeah, no, I'll check them out. I love those. I think those are like some of the kind of most interesting like cultural crossover moments. I think I asked that question and just realized I didn't have one prepared, but off the cuff, I would. There's like some obvious ones like Mars Volta doing one-armed scissor on Jules Holland, and people just not knowing what to do with it. Um,
Yeah,
and the
at the
classic. Oh, go on.
drive-in doing it.
Yes, at the drive-in. Mars Volta are related.
Yeah, yeah. They Mars Volta came out of at the drive-in.
Okay, all right. I wasn't just having a stroke.
No, but One Armed Scissor is an at the drive-in song.
Yes, 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 yes. And but that performance is like mental.
It's it's yeah, yeah. Jules Holland has like some pretty cool stuff. Have you seen like the Desert Sessions performance from Jules Holland?
Oh yeah, of course I have.
Of course.
I was like, yeah, I think that was like a cool. What I love most about that is the lineup because you've got like Joey C on drums for that. There's obviously PJ Harvey, Brian O'Connor on bass. They're all
Yeah,
playing instruments. Like Josh is playing a falcon that he never played. Like,
yeah. I met Joey and Brian outside of a Eagles of Death Metal gig in Vancouver, like
no way.
years and years and years ago. Yeah, they were like there was a street magician like outside of the gig, like working for quarters or whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were just out there watching him as well. So I was like, "Hey guys," and they're like, "Hi."
One of those moments where you feel like you need to say something, but then,
Yeah, I every time I've met somebody like that, I'm like, I don't want to burden them with like a bunch of bullshit. So I'm always like, "Hey Brian, hey
it's
Joey."
not,
And they're
it's
like,
nice to know that they exist in the wild and that they actually exist as people.
yeah, totally. And be like, "Hey, see you tonight."
Oh, that's cool. That's rad. All right. Well, I feel like one day we'll make it through maybe a session without talking about Queens of the Stone Age related paraphernalia.
I think we'd have to make like a concentrated effort to like
There'll be
bite our
people with
tongues.
like a buzzer being like, "Ding, take a shot" as soon as someone mentions something Queens
True,
related.
yeah, and they would die by the end of the episode.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, this has been great. Monomania is also great. I'm going to put some stuff in the description of performances and sort of things we've referenced. Highly recommend people check it out or put it on if you haven't put it on in ages. Because yeah, if you were unsettled by it on first listen, it might have that level of shock and surprise might have gone now, and you can actually enjoy it for what it is. And maybe I think the next thing is we should probably talk about spoon transference at some point. It's now come up twice.
Sure, yeah, yeah, I would love to.
All right, wicked. Thanks very much to Nathan once again for joining me. Stay tuned for another episode. I think we got to pick up on a few threads that we left there. Maybe we'll talk about spoon transference at some point. As I said, you can get more reviews from Doodle Review linked down below. The email newsletter is there to sign up to. Check out Crones, and yeah, other than that, we'll knock it on the head, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, mate. My ego. Bye.